Story 1. An inability to empathize with other people or take accountability for his own actions. It was everyone else's fault but his that he cheated on his ex before me for 6 months. Story 2. Excessive control masked as care and affection may seem sweet at first. You might think that the person truly cares about you and worries about your well-being. But over time, it transforms into an absolute nightmare. The control extends to every aspect of your life, from your appearance to your social media and who you interact with. You start to fear doing something wrong, afraid of triggering another argument, but there's always a reason to nitpick. If you sense that you're being controlled, don't hesitate to stop it right away. Story 3. The fact that all of her ex-boyfriends were horrible people who had done horrible things to her, and she was always just the victim. There were a bunch of other red flags, but when I ran into a guy I worked with while she and I were walking into a store, and she freaked out about me knowing him, he was one of her ex-boyfriends who she had spoken negatively about but only referred to him by his first name. I had to question all her stories. This guy was one of the most stand-up people I had ever met. Turns out she was completely irrational. She also accused me of having inappropriate relations with her dog because she had a dream about it. Definitely do not ignore that. Story 4. Oh, I should have run when I heard my ex's reaction to a sad story. I was one day telling my ex about a family friend whose son, 30, married, with a good life and in the middle of getting a doctor of philosophy, had a heart attack, lost oxygen to his brain, and became mentally and physically handicapped. Shitty American health insurance hardly covered his treatments, and he was left needing expensive therapies, hospital stays, and medications. Of course, the community came together to fundraise the money for them. Well, since his wife was still married to him, this fundraised money was also technically her money. One night, she took it all and ran. There was nothing that could be done. My ex's reaction, well, that was her right to do so. What's the problem? It's not illegal. He ended up being so nasty to me, and that right there should have been my reason to leave. Huge red flag that I ignored. Story 5. A man I dated when I was 19 sent me an invoice for a small order of fries, which he paid for when I left my wallet at home. Note that I had treated him to a ski trip previously. So yes, being stingy is a red flag. Story 6. He was too nice. We were only together for 2 months, but he never disagreed with anything I said. It was all, "You're so right, oh my gosh, exactly, and I think the exact same." I posted the story on here before, but too long. Didn't read. I broke up with him over text and never spoke to him again. He stabbed the girlfriend he got with after me when she broke up with him in person. Story 7. Every date we had revolved around alcohol. I thought it was no big deal because he could hold his alcohol well. It became a big deal. Never date someone in active addiction. Story 8. Always came up with excuses when trying to spend time together, rather than come up with solutions. But then gaslit me every time I questioned whether they actually wanted to be in a relationship. Story 9. We got on beautifully when we were alone, but the way she behaved around other people after too much alcohol, which was her ultimate idea of a great time, was beyond insane. Why did I think marriage was the thing to do? Now I can't afford to buy her out in a gray divorce. Story 10-1. Always having an excuse for her behavior and disregarding my concerns. 2. Asking me if I had ever cheated on a partner before. I never have, and then avoiding the question when I asked her instead of answering. 3. Being very disrespectful about her ex when he never hurt her. 4. Randomly going into in-depth talks about her exes. 5. Withdrawing emotionally. 6. Saying her best friend will decide if I will be her boyfriend or not, and that I need to meet her best friend so she can decide if we will continue this. 7. Not wanting to be seen with me in public by her mom's friends. The list could go on, but at least I will never ignore any of them again in someone else. Story 11. Ex threw and broke things when he was angry over trivial matters. I ignored it because it was directed at objects, and I have thrown things in anger before. However, after we got married, he started throwing things at me and wouldn't stop after I warned him multiple times that the behavior was a deal breaker. And the things he broke were always my belongings. I left him. He was stunned. Story 12. We hit a few rough patches, and she went silent for long periods of time. So the last time that happened, I just assumed that we were in one of those mood swings again. It turns out she wasn't happy in the relationship and had been thinking about breaking things off for 2 years. But because we were both bad at communicating as kids, started dating at 22 and 20, and lasted almost a decade, we had no idea what was bothering the other person. Things could have been over 5 years earlier if we had just talked. Story 13. When they pinned me down while we were making out, I thought they were playing around until I saw something weird in their eyes. When I tried to get out of the grip, he only held on tighter. It was at that moment I realized something was up. I had to straight up ask him to let me go, and he finally snapped out of whatever gaze he was in. Story 14. She slept in the same bed as her male best friend. One day, I found a pair of boxer briefs on the head of her bed, and they weren't the brand I wore. She tried saying they were mine, and I just kind of accepted it. I asked her mom about the sleeping with her best friend thing, and she said it was normal and they've done it for years. She dumped me a couple of months later and started dating him pretty quickly after that. I had that pair of underwear in my drawer for way longer than I should have. Story 15. A lot of previous partners. It turns out there was a reason nobody wanted to have him for keeps. In a small town, everyone knew he got around, being handsome and physically fit. But in bed, he was utterly hopeless and refused to change any of his methods because he claimed he's experienced and an expert. He knows what he's doing and nobody's complained before. I talked to his ex-partners. They all said the same thing, only repetitive actions until he was satisfied and no actual skills. Story 16. When I first met my husband, I would watch him work on a vehicle. If there was a problem, he would throw a fit, throw tools, and be in a bad mood. Years later, he does the same, but the anger he has seeped into other areas of life because he has never dealt with whatever issues have caused that anger. Living with someone like this becomes like walking on eggshells to please him because he is critical, has high expectations, and is so easily irritated, etc. It is very draining and steals any life and fun out of life. I have always been the one to try to lighten the mood and laugh and play. I would tell anyone that if you see anger, run very far away. That is something they need to fix and deal with. You will not change that person. They have got to want to change, and if they don't, then you are in for a difficult married life with rare moments of good times. After 26 years and becoming a shell of myself living with this person, I felt that I was drowning. The divorce will be final soon. Story 17. My first relationship. Before it even started, when we were 17, he had his birthday. My sister told me to congratulate him, as she is a few years younger than him, so I did. He was so mad about it because he wondered why I didn't congratulate him myself. Afterwards, I told my friends about his reaction, and they made me realize I was mad at him for lashing out like that. So I told him. He told me it was a fake test to see if I would trust him enough to come and talk about his behavior or not. 3 months later, we have a relationship for 2 years with 2 breakups in between. I'm glad it was so long ago, and I am in an amazingly healthy relationship now. Story 18. The gaslighting, but I didn't really know what gaslighting was. I kept asking people if I was losing it. Also, the you know what you did nonsense but never telling me when I clearly didn't know. The reason I didn't pick this up was because it was a common thing people said when someone did something wrong. Even on television, it seemed normal. Story 19. Disrespecting my needs and time. Insisting that I attend his hobbies, activities, and family events but refusing to attend any of mine. Inability to compromise. His intense rage whenever his favorite sports team lost a game. Excessive flattery and attention in the early stages of a relationship. Story 20. The love bombing at first, the excessive self-importance, and doesn't care about what I am saying and what I feel, the anger problems that became verbal and physical abuse, a narcissistic guy. Never again. Story 21. Innocent ribbing. Young and dumb me thought that not overreacting made me a cool girlfriend. Turns out I was just a doormat, and it wasn't innocent. Story 22. Love bombing, asking me to be his girlfriend after 2 weeks of talking. Breadcrumbing me just enough to keep me invested. Apologizing about his hurtful actions but never changing them. Avoiding talking about any problems or concerns about our relationship and his behaviors to the point I stopped bringing it up, which made me develop severe anxiety issues in all areas of life, but especially in a relationship. never wanting to spend time together or trying new things together unless it was about sex, making secret profiles so he could lust after other women online. Story 23. The way she defends her parents when they abused her. Whenever her mother starts criticizing her during family events, I step in to defend my wife, and then I get attacked from both sides. She's trying so hard to earn their love and respect that I'm always thrown aside. Story 24. Inability or unwillingness to share emotional issues or past. Always having lots of cash on hand. Avoiding questions and little lies. Crossing previously set boundaries that should have been non-issues. As a result, I am very much a one-strike person when it comes to what is and is not acceptable to myself in a relationship. Everyone should be able to express what is and isn't okay for them in a relationship. If you can't agree on boundaries, leave the relationship or don't start it. Save yourself the pain. Story 25. I wish I had not ignored all the times I woke up in the middle of the night to see she was not in bed. I would walk around the apartment and find her always coincidentally ending a phone call in our kitchen, the furthest room from the bedroom. Story 26. He said he was not smart like I was. Boy, was he right. My first husband was manipulative as ever. When I told him that I was having issues trusting him, he gaslighted me into believing that it was a personal problem I had within myself. I totally fell for it because I was young and naive. He basically had multiple affairs while we were married and was constantly chatting with other women on the internet. A guy I dated once asked me what I was doing with him. Later on, I asked him the same question, and he got really upset with me and said, "Why would you even say such a thing?" He turned out to be a manipulative covert narcissist. Took me 2 years to get over the pain he brought with him. Story 27. Adult temper tantrums when doing household tasks or when a computer is not working. Not 100% financially independent over the age of 25. No in-person friends, only online. Does not go to the dentist when they have insurance and no dental phobia. They just do not go because they are lazy. Violence or degradation. Hitting, biting, choking, spitting. During intimacy without prior discussion. Story 28. We decided to take 3 weeks off work while we were engaged and drive across the United States, from Florida to California and back. We were about 100 miles into the trip when he told me he didn't want to do any driving. I drove the entire time. I married him anyway, and we divorced after 9 years. It was a colossal time suck. Story 29. Poor emotional regulation. Lack of emotional intelligence, especially empathy. Extreme self-centeredness. No relationship experience outside of high school. Poor communication skills and avoidance of communication altogether. Inconsiderate of other people's time, feelings, or belongings. Hypocritical. Self-aggrandizing narratives about themselves and their life. Calling themselves an entrepreneur or investor for gambling with cryptocurrency. Enmeshed with their emotionally incestuous mother. Making excuses for their deadbeat father. Elon Musk and Trump fanboy. Lack of general education and no interest or curiosity to learn or grow in that department. Science denialism. Story 30. When he actually told me he was a borderline narcissist. This was 8 years ago, before narcissist was the popular term. I should have looked it up and run for the hills. I'm so glad that's over and I survived. Story 31. Being manipulated by my ex, who probably cheated on me while he was traveling with his parents. After 5 months of our relationship, he never told his parents we were dating, so they invited their friend's daughter, with whom my ex cheated on me. Then he told me it happened just because he was drunk. He gave me comments about my appearance, saying things like, "I think you look 5 out of 10, but I'm okay with it. So I'll never choose a girl who's 10 out of 10 instead of you." After our breakup, his online friends and his mother called me to ask me to give him a second chance. Story 32. Him literally telling me early on in our relationship that he was jealous of me because I get perceived more and treated better than him. For some inexplicable reason, I thought he was joking. Story 33. She told me after we got married her priorities were 1. Her sister. 2. Her father. 3. Her husband, me. 4. Her mother. whom she couldn't stand. Go figure, her sister and I didn't get along, and we got divorced. I shouldn't have been in a relationship with someone where I was there to facilitate her other priorities. Marry someone who prioritizes you equally. Story 34. They were a marathon runner, and every single decision they made centered around running. When to eat, what to eat, how late to stay up, and when to do intimate things. They couldn't take a walk because it sapped energy, nor could they take a road trip because it tightened all the muscles. Every stupid little thing. And they were only an amateur runner. If they were a pro, fine, but they were mediocre at best. Story 35. Never getting to do anything only I wanted to do. If it wasn't something we both enjoyed, it never happened. I was made to feel guilty for wanting to watch a show he didn't like when he was around, or play a game when he didn't want to. Story 36. Social media activity. Every mundane moment had to be documented and shared. He continued to add attractive users on Instagram, claiming they were potential clients and he needed to network. The ratio of women versus men he follows. Liking women's selfies and salacious photos. After finding out his longest relationship was only 2 years, never married, no kids, never cohabited with a woman, and being in his early 40s, he wasn't going to ever settle down.